The two suns hung in the sky like burning eyes. One red, heavy, and slow. The other white, sharp, and cruel. Together, they poured fire onto Xirax-9, planet made of sand, silence, and death. The dunes stretched forever, golden and smooth from a distance, but close up, they were jagged, sharp as glass. The wind never stopped. It didn't blow, it attacked, hurling sand that could slice through steel given time. The air was thin, hot, and tasted like rust. No water, no shade, no life. Nothing had ever survived here for long, not even the strongest alien species. The intergalactic Concord had one rule: do not land on Xirax-9. If you do, you die. But today, 3 figures walked. They moved slowly, step by step, like shadows that refused to fade. Their suits were old, patched with tape and torn cloth, helmets cracked, visors fogged with every breath. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. They had been walking for 3 days under the burning suns, with almost no water, no food, and no hope. The one they carried inside. Their names were Kale, Mira, and Daxterans. Humans from Earth. They hadn't come here by choice. They were prisoners, locked in the back of a Concord supply ship, forgotten like trash. Humans were not respected in the galaxy. Too emotional, too weak, too strange. Aliens saw them as loud, messy, and illogical. So when the ship crashed during a solar storm, no one expected the humans to survive. The alien guards gave up fast. One died screaming as his suit melted. Another ran in circles until he fell, cooked alive. The third just sat down, took off his helmet, and let the desert take him. But the Terrans, they fought. Kale was the oldest, with deep lines on his face and eyes that had seen too much. He had survived the Sahara drought back on Earth when he was young. He knew how to read the wind, how to find shade, how to walk without wasting energy. Myra was a scientist, quiet, sharp, always thinking. She had once built a water filter from trash in a refugee camp. Dax was the youngest, wild-haired and loud, but smart in the way street kids are: clever, fast, good with his hands. He once fixed a broken engine with chewing gum and wire. Together, they did what no one thought possible. They crawled from the wreckage. They pulled broken metal from the ship and used it to block the sun. They tied hoses together to catch the tiny drops of dew at night. They ate 1 day's ration and made it last 5, chewing slowly, pretending it was more. They shared water like it was gold, and when one of them fell, the others pulled them up. On the second night, Myra almost didn't make it. She stepped on what looked like solid ground, but it wasn't. The salt crust broke, and she sank into a pit of thick, bubbling mud. Her leg burned. She screamed once, then bit her lip to stay quiet. Kale grabbed her arm, his muscles shaking. Dax threw a rope made from torn suit fabric. They pulled and pulled until she came free, bleeding and shaking. She sat in the sand, breathing hard. Her suit was ruined. Her leg was raw. But she looked at her hands and whispered, "Still working." And they moved on. By the 3rd day, their water was gone. Their lips cracked and bled. Their heads pounded. The suns beat down like hammers. Every step was pain. Every breath felt like fire in the chest. Dax stumbled. Kale caught him. Mira leaned on a broken pole like a cane. They didn't talk about giving up. They didn't talk about dying. They talked about the ridge, the rocky rise in the north. And beyond it, a rumor, an old Concord outpost, buried under sand, with a working comms system, with a chance to call for help. They didn't know if it was real. Maybe it was just a story. But they walked toward it anyway, because humans don't survive just with strength or tech. They survive with hope, with each other. That night, the storm came. The sky turned black. Lightning flashed in wild colors: blue, purple, white. Thunder cracked like the sky was breaking. Most would have run. Most would have hidden. But Kale smiled. Power, he said. Mira understood. The outpost needs energy. The storm makes energy. We can take it. Dax laughed, dry and broken. Only humans would try to steal lightning from the sky. But he helped. They always did. They reached the salt flats, a huge, white desert that looked like frozen milk. Underneath, the ground was poison. Above, the sky burned with electricity. Kale climbed onto a rock, holding a long metal pole they had pulled from the wreck. Wires ran down to Mira, who crouched in the sand, connecting them to a small, dented box, her father's old hand. Radio, made on Earth. Before space, before aliens. No batteries, no computers, just gears, wires, and human hands. Dax turned the crank, slow at first, then faster. Their arms ached, their hearts raced. Lightning struck the pole, a flash white and blinding. The radio hummed, for 1 second. The signal flew into space, a weak, broken pulse. But real, we are alive. Then silence. The storm passed. The radio died. They sat in the dust, exhausted, half blind, half dead. But they were smiling, because they had done it. Not with alien weapons, not with perfect logic, but with mind, with heart, with each other. And as the twin suns rose again, burning the world to ash, the 3 Terrans stood up, 1 foot in front of the other, still walking, still fighting, still human. The desert was deadly, but it wasn't for them. The morning sun rose like fire on a knife. The salt flats stretched aheadless, white, and silent. From a distance, it looked like snow, peaceful, calm. But Kale, Mira, and Dax knew better. They had seen the videos, read the old warnings. The salt flats of Xerax 9 weren't land. They were a trap. Beneath the thin, shiny crust was a thick, bubbling sludge-oak, hot and hungry. It didn't just burn. It ate through metal, plastic, skin. 1 wrong step, and you'd sink, screaming, as the acid chewed through your bones. No rescue, no mercy. Kale adjusted his cracked visor and took the lead. Stay behind me. Step only where I step. Mira nodded, her hand gripping the dented radio like a lifeline. Dax wiped sweat from his brow, his breath loud in the helmet. The silence was worse than the storm. No wind, no sound. Just the crunch of their boots on salt and the beating of their hearts. Step, pause, listen, step. The desert watched halfway across. The ground trembled, a soft crack, then dash collapse. The crust broke under Kale's foot. He dropped fast, 1 leg sinking into the bubbling mud below. He cried out as the acid burned through his suit, searing his calf. Kale. Mira screamed. Dax dropped to his knees and grabbed Kale's arm. Hold on, don't move. Kale gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. It's burning. Mira tore off her pack and pulled out a roll of emergency sealant tape meant for hole breaches, not skin. But it was all they had. She slapped it over the hole in Kale's suit, sealing the tear. The acid couldn't get in, but the damage was. Dundot. His leg was raw, swollen, bleeding. We can't carry you, Dax said, voice shaking. Not here, not on this ground. Kale looked at the endless white. Then I'll crawl. Mira knelt beside him. No, we go together. Or not at all. She pulled out a metal pole from the wreckage and jammed it into solid ground. Tied a rope around it. The other end, she looped around Kale's chest. Dax, pull. I'll guide him. They moved like that, slow, painful, step by step. Kale hopped, on 1 leg, face twisted in pain. Mira held his arm, whispering, You're okay, you're alive, keep going. Dax pulled the rope, eyes locked ahead, jaw tight. The sun beat down, the silence pressed in, but they didn't stop, because Terrans didn't leave their own behind. Hours passed, the ridge grew closer, a dark line against the burning sky. Hope, then a sound, faint, mechanical, coming from the north. They froze. Dax, Looked up, is it? Mira held her breath. From behind the ridge, a shape appeared. Low, wide, moving on treads. Paint faded. Antenna bent. But it was moving. And it had the Concord logo. A rover, an old one, desert-rated, possibly automated, possibly broken, but it was there. Someone's been here, Kale whispered. Or is here, Dax said. They reached the edge of the salt flats and collapsed on solid rock, gasping. Kale's leg throbbed. Mira's hands shook. Dax stared at the rover as it rolled closer. Then it stopped. A hatch opened. No one came out, but a light blinked on its side. SOS power low, waiting for signal. Mira's eyes widened. It's not here to rescue. It's trapped, like us. Dax laughed, half in disbelief, half in awe. Even machines give up on this planet. But Mira wasn't laughing. She was thinking. She looked at the rover, then at her hand-cranked radio, then at the sky. The storm gave us power, she said slowly. What if we give it to this? Kale frowned. You want to power a broken machine with a toy radio, not power it, she said. Talk to it. She crawled to the rover and pried open a side panel. Wires, dust, corrosion, but the core was intact. She pulled out her radio, opened the back, and began connecting wires by hand-twisting, taping, praying. Dax watched. You're insane. That thing's from the past. This is Concord tech. Yeah, Myra said, not looking up. But we're Terrans. We fix things. We make things work. Minutes passed. Her hands were bleeding. Her vision blurred. Then a beep dot. The rover's screen flickered. Text appeared. Signal detected. Origin. Hand crank. Source decoding. Another pause. Then, message received. We are alive. Response. Help is coming. Hold position. Silence. Then, Dax let out a wild, broken laugh. It hurt us. Kale pulled Mira into a one-armed hug. You did it. But Myra didn't smile. She looked at the rover, at the sky, at the desert. It's not just us, she whispered. That message, it wasn't just for us. It was for anyone stuck here. Anyone who never gave up. The rover powered down. Its light faded, but the message was sent. And somewhere, far above the burning world, a Concord patrol ship received the signal. Night fell fast on Xerax 9. One moment the sky burned red and gold. The next it turned black, deep, endless, and cold. The twin suns were gone. The stars blinked on like tiny eyes watching from far away. But there was no peace in the dark. The cold came like a knife. After the scorching heat of day, the temperature dropped to near zero. Frost formed on the rocks. Their breath turned to ice inside their helmets. Kale shivered against the stone, his injured leg wrapped in torn fabric and sealant tape. The burn throbbed, deep and angry. Mira sat beside him, rubbing her arms, trying to stay warm. Dax paced in small circles, stomping his feet, keeping the blood moving. They had no fire, no blankets, no shelter strong enough to block the wind that now howled like a lost animal. But they had something else. They had each other. Mira pulled out the hand-crank radio again. She held it close, like a child. It worked once, she whispered. It can work again. Dax looked at her. What if no one's listening? What if that signal just floated into space and disappeared? Mira didn't answer right away. She looked up at the stars. So many, so bright, so far. My father used to say that every light up there is a story. Some are old, some are new, but none are silent. If you speak, someone, somewhere, hears. Kale smiled weakly. Your dad was a poet. He was a mechanic, Mira said. Fixed broken things, just like us. Dax sat down, pulling his knees to his chest. We're not fixed, Mira. We're falling apart. Silence. Then Kale spoke, low and strong. Maybe, but we're still here. And as long as we're breathing, we're not broken, we're fighting. The wind screamed. A piece of metal from the wreck clattered down the ridge, but the three of them stayed close. They shared the last of their water. Just a few sips passed between them in a cracked cup. They took turns using the warmest piece of wreckage as a shield from the wind. When Kale's pain got worse, Mira sang a soft old earth song about mountains and rivers and home. Dax joined in, his voice rough but true, and for a few minutes, the cold didn't feel so deep. But dawn brought a new danger. The suns rose again, and with them came the sound, a low rumble, deep in the ground. The sand shook, the rocks trembled, then dash movement from the far dunes. Shapes appeared, dozens of them, low, fast, skimming the sand like shadows. They had no eyes, no limbs, just smooth black shells and sharp edges. They moved in silence, cutting through the dunes like knives. Scavengers, Kale whispered, mechanical, left behind by old mining crews. They hunt anything with heat, anything alive. Mira's breath caught, our body heat. We're like beacons. Dax stood slowly. Then we turn it off. How? Kale asked. Dax looked at the wrecked rover. We bury ourselves in the sand, up to the neck. Let our suits cool, become rocks. It was crazy. It was their only chance. They worked fast, using broken panels and hands. They dug shallow holes in the shadow of the ridge. They covered their suits with cold sand, leaving only their helmets exposed. They turned off every comes even the inner heaters. Their breaths slowed, their bodies cooled, and they waited. The scavengers came closer. They moved like a wave, scanning, hunting. One passed right beside Mira. She held her breath. Her heart pounded so hard she feared the sound would give her away. The machine paused. A red light scanned her helmet. Then it moved on. One by one, the black shapes passed, silent and deadly, searching for warmth. Finding nothing, after an hour, they were gone. The three Terrans crawled out, shaking, pale, but alive. Dax laughed, weak but real. We fooled death with dirt. Kale leaned on his good leg. That's what humans do. We don't win with strength. We win with cleverness. Mira looked at the horizon. The northern ridge was behind them now. Ahead only more desert. But farther, just visible through the haze, was a dark shape rising from the sand. A dome, half buried, rusted, but standing. The outpost, she whispered. Kale nodded. If it's still sealed, if the air's good, if the comms work. Dax grinned. Then we call home. They started walking again. Kale limped. Mira supported him. Dax carried the radio. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Every step hurt. Every breath was heavy. But they kept moving. Because they had come too far to stop. Because they were not just survivors. They were Terrans. And Terrans did not break. They did not run. They did not give up. Even in a world that wanted them dead. They carried fire in there. Bones a quiet, stubborn flame that said, I am still here. I am still fighting. I am still human. The suns burned above. The sand stretched ahead. But the outpost grew larger with every step, and with it hope, not loud, not flashy, but real, because on Xerax 9, where no life should exist, 3 humans walked, and the desert, 4, the first time in its long, dead history, felt fear. The outpost stood half buried in the red sand like a forgotten tomb. Its dome was cracked, its metal walls eaten by rust and time. Wires hung like dead vines. The air around it was still too. Still, no wind, no sound, just silence, thick and heavy, like the planet itself was holding its breath. Kale, Mira, and Dax stopped at the edge of the dune, staring up at it. After days of walking, after fire and frost and fear, it was real, not a dream, not a mirage. The Concord outpost Alpha 7 was here, and it might be their only way home. But the door was sealed, not broken, not open, locked. A heavy blast hatch, made of alloy stronger than steel, with a control panel dark and lifeless beside it. Dax kicked it once. Nothing. He kicked again. "Come on, you piece of junk. Stop," Mira said quietly. "If the seal's still good, the air inside might be too." Kale leaned on his crutchier piece of wreckage Dax had tied to his leg with wire. His face was pale, his lips cracked, but his eyes were sharp. "No power, no lights. If the core is dead, we can't open it. Can't breathe, can't call for help." A cold silence fell. They had come so far, and now a door. Dax sat down in the sand. "We walked through fire, acid, and robot vultures, just to die in front of a locked door." Mira didn't answer. She was already moving. She pulled out her multi-tool, a small, battered device from her belt hand, pried open the control panel. Dust spilled out. Wires were broken. The screen was shattered. But she didn't stop. She wiped the dust with her sleeve, checked the circuits, followed the power line back into the wall. "There's a main core underground," she said. "If it's not destroyed, we can restart it." "And how do we do that?" Kale asked. "By giving it power," she said. "Real power, not just a spark from a storm. Something steady." Dax looked at the sky. "We don't have a generator. We don't have fuel. We don't even have hope left." Mira turned to him. "We have the pulse." "The what?" Kale asked. She held up the hand crank radio. "It's not just a signal box. It's a battery. Old, yes. Weak, yes. But it stores energy. And if we can connect it to the outpost's backup line, just for a minute, we might wake the system." Dax stared. "You want to power a space outpost with a toy from Earth?" Mira smiled. "Just a little. It worked before. It can work again." Kale nodded. "Then let's try." They worked fast. Dax dug around the base of the outpost, finding a buried access hatch covered in sand. Mira pried it open. Below was a tangle of old cables, Concord tech, complex, alien in design. But she didn't flinch. She had spent years studying broken systems in Earth's ruins. She knew how to listen to machines. "Look for the red wire," she said. "It's the emergency power line. Leads straight to the core." Dax found it half chewed by sandworms, but still connected. Mira spliced her radio's output into the wire, using tape in her last working connector. Her hands shook. Sweat rolled down her temple. One wrong move, and the system could fry. Or worse, explode. "Ready?" she asked. Kale took a deep breath. "Do it." She flipped a switch. Nothing happened. They waited. 1 second, 5, 10, then a flicker, a single green light, blinked on the control panel, then another, and another. The door, HUMMED, slowly, with a groan of metal that hadn't moved in decades, the blast hatch began to open. Dax laughed. "It's working. She did it." But Mira didn't cheer. She watched the light, listened to the sound. "It's not fully powered. Just enough for one cycle. Once the door closes, it might not open again." Kale looked at her. "Then we don't close it." They stepped inside. The air was cold, still, but breathable. Mira checked her scanner. Oxygen levels, 18%. Safe, pressure stable. "We can take off our helmets." They did slowly, carefully. The air tasted old, dusty, but sweet. Real. They were inside. The main room was dark, filled with broken consoles and fallen panels. Maps of the galaxy hung on the wall, faded. A chair lay on its side. A cup sat on a desk still half full of dried liquid. Time had stopped here, but in the center of the room, one console glowed faintly. COMM system, standby mode. Myra ran to it. Her fingers flew over the alien keys. "I can send a signal, a strong one, if I boost it through the main dish." Kale limped beside her. "How long will it last?" 5 minutes, maybe 10, then the power dies for good. Dax looked at the others. So we make those minutes count, Mira typed fast. Found the emergency channel, wrote the message. Terran survivors Alpha 7 Outpost Xerax 9 request immediate evacuation. 3 alive, repeat. 3 alive. She pressed send. A low tone echoed through the room, signal transmitted. They waited, silence. Then at beep, the screen flickered. Text appeared, signal received. Rescue ship, en route, arrival, 18 hours. Dax fell to his knees. They're coming. Kale closed his eyes. We made it. Mira didn't move. She just stared at the screen. They had done it. Not with weapons, not with ships, not with alien power, but with a broken radio, a dream, and the will to keep going. The rescue ship was coming. 18 hours away. That's what the screen said. That's what they hoped was true. But on Xerax 9, time didn't move like it did on Earth. 1 hour could feel like a day. 1 night could break a mind. And now, after everything, after the fire, the frost, the scavengers, the sealed door, they had to wait, and wait, and wait. The outpost hummed with weak power. The lights flickered like tired hearts. The comms console blinked slowly, holding the connection like a dying hand. Outside, the wind rose again, howling against the dome, as if the planet itself refused to let them go. Inside, the 3 Terrans sat in silence. Kale lay on a broken cot, his leg wrapped tight. The burn had turned dark around the edges. His skin was hot. His breath came in short gasps. Mira checked it every few minutes, but there was no medicine, no antibiotics, just tape, cloth, and hope. Dax paced the room, restless. 18 hours. That's 2 sunrises. We've survived storms, acid, and machines that eat people. But can we survive waiting? Myra sat at the console, eyes locked on the screen. We have 2. The signal was sent. The reply came. They know we're here. But what if they don't come? Dax asked, voice low. What if the ship breaks down? What if they think it's a fake signal? What if they'll come? Kale said, his voice weak but firm. Because we are here, and humans don't send signals just to give up. Dax stopped pacing. He looked at Kale, then at Mira. You know, back on Earth, I stole food just to eat. I fought just to survive. I never thought I'd die in a desert on a dead planet, with people who care if I live. Mira turned to him. We're not just surviving anymore, Dax. We're together. He smiled just a little. Then he sat down, finally still. Night fell. The cold returned. They pulled broken panels over themselves like blankets. They shared the last of their water. 3 sips passed in silence. No one took more. No one asked for less. And then, Mira began to speak. Not about the rescue. Not about the pain. She spoke about Earth. About the sea, near her village, blue, wide, and full of life. About the sound of rain on rooftops. About her father teaching her to fix a radio by the light of a kerosene lamp. He said every broken thing has a story, she whispered. And if you listen, it tells you how to fix it. Dax closed his eyes. I remember the sky. Real sky, with clouds and birds. Not just fire and dust, Kale added, voice soft. I remember laughter. At night, around a fire. People talking, singing. Just because they were alive. They didn't cry. But something inside them cracked open. Because for the first time in days, they weren't just fighting to live. They were remembering why. Hours passed. Then a sound, faint, deep, from below. The floor trembled. Mira sat up. What was that? Kale reached for his crutch. The core. Dax ran to the access hatch. No, that wasn't the machine. Then again, a low thump, like something knocking from under the sand. They froze. The outpost was built on rock. Numbered tunnels, no life. Nothing should be under them, but something was. Mira grabbed the flashlight. Dax picked up a metal rod. Kale stood, gritting his teeth against the pain. The thumping grew louder, then a crack. A seam in the floor split open, sand poured in, and from below, something rose. Not a machine, not a beast. It was round, smooth, and gray like a stone, but moving. It hovered slightly, pulsing with a soft blue light. No eyes, no mouth, just silence. Dax stepped back. What is that? Mira stared. It's not from the Concord. Not from any species I know. The object floated higher. It didn't attack. It didn't speak. It just watched. Then, suddenly, it flashed. A wave of light filled the room, and in that moment, they saw, not words, not sounds. Memories. A planet, long dead, a sky without stars, a people who lived underground, building machines to survive. A final message. We are gone, but we left this to say we were here. The object wasn't a threat. It was a record, a last gift from a lost civilization. It had been buried for centuries, waiting for someone to wake it. And now, the outpost's power had called it. Mira whispered, "It's not trying to hurt us. It's trying to speak." The light faded. The object lowered. It touched the floor once, gently, like a hand on a grave. Then it sank back into the crack. The sand closed behind it. Silence returned. Dax exhaled. We're not the first to survive this place. Kale nodded. But we might be the first too. Remember it. Mira looked at the screen. Still blinking. Still alive. We'll tell them, she said. About the door. The storm. The rover. The light. Everything. Dax smiled. Let the galaxy know Neurons don't just survive. We remember. Outside, the wind died. The stars shone clear, and for the first time, the desert felt small, because 3 humans had walked through its fire. They had faced its silence. They had outsmarted its death. And now, as the first sun began to rise, they sat together not as prisoners, not as survivors, but as witnesses, to pain, to courage, to life, and the long, quiet truth no one had spoken. The 6th sunrise on Xerax 9 came like a slow fire first, a thin red line along the horizon, then a glow, then light. The twin suns rose again, one behind the other, pouring heat over the dunes. Sand shimmered like broken glass. The air wavered, hot and still. Inside the outpost, the lights had gone out. The power from the hand-crank radio had finally died. The screen was dark. The door hung half open, groaning in the wind. The rescue ship was due in 6 hours. This signal had been true, if the message had been heard, if anyone still cared. But now, there was no way to know. Myra sat by the dead console, her fingers resting on the cold keys. She didn't move. She just stared at the screen, as if waiting for a miracle. Dax stood at the broken dome, watching the sky. No ship, no signal, nothing. Kale lay on the cot, his face pale, his breathing shallow. The burn on his leg had spread. His skin burned with fever. He mumbled in his sleep words about rain, about home, about a girl named Lyra, who had once kissed him under a tree on Earth. Mira knelt beside him. She wiped his forehead with a damp cloth. Water was running out, but she used it anyway. "You're not dying here, Kale," she whispered. "Not after all this." He opened his eyes. "Promise me, if I don't make it, you'll send my voice, my story, so someone knows I was here." She held his hand. "I promise, but you are coming home." Dax turned from the dome. "We need a signal, a real one, something bright, something loud, something the whole sky can see." Myra looked around the ruined room. No power, no fuel, no transmitters. Then her eyes fell on the dish outside, half buried in sand. Was the outpost's main communication dish, a huge, curved mirror of metal, once used to send messages across the stars. It was old, rusted, tilted to one side. But it was there, if we can aim it, she said slowly, and give it one burst of energy, we can reflect a signal. Even without power, the dish can bounce light, like a mirror. Dax frowned. Bounce light? From what? We don't have a laser. We don't have anything. Mira looked at the sky, at the two burning suns. Then she smiled. We don't need a laser. We have the sun. Dax stared. You want to use the sun as a signal? Yes, she said. We aim the dish. Focus. The sunlight. Create a flash bright enough to be seen from space. A pulse. A beacon. Kale tried to sit up, but the dish, it's broken, and it needs power to move. Mira stood. Then we move it by hand. Dax laughed. You're crazy. That thing weighs tons. And we have 3 of us, she said, in 6 hours, and 1 chance. She grabbed a metal bar from the wreckage. We dig, we push, we make it work. For a moment, no one moved. Then Kale, gritting his teeth, pulled himself up. Then let's get to work. They went outside. The heat hit like a wall. Sand burned under their boots. The dish was half buried, its gears frozen, its base cracked. Mira studied the structure. We need to tilt it up. Point it east toward the orbit path. When the rescue ship comes, it'll see the flash. Dax and Kale dug around the base with their hands and broken tools. Sand flew. Their fingers bled. Their suits soaked with sweat. Mira used the multi-tool to unlock the manual lever backup system from the old days. On 3, she said. We pushed together. 1, 2, 3. They threw their weight against the bar. The dish groaned. Metal screamed. And it moved. Just a little. But it moved. They did it again and again. Hour after hour. They pushed. Dug. Adjusted. Propped, used rocks. Wreckage. Even Kale's crutch as a lever. Myra guided them, shouting directions over the wind. Dax's arms shook. Kale's leg burned with pain. Mira's hands were raw and bleeding. But they didn't stop, because this wasn't just about survival. It was about being seen, about saying, we are here, we are human. We did not die in silence. By the 5th hour, the dish was aimed just right, facing the sky where the rescue ship would come. Now, they waited. The sun climbed higher, the desert burned, and then a flicker in the sky. A tiny dot, moving fast, growing. Dax pointed. Is that? Myra shielded her eyes. It's early. Too early. Kale whispered. Or they came faster. The dot grew brighter, dot closer. It wasn't moving like a storm. It wasn't a mirage. It was a ship, and it was coming straight at them. Mira's heart pounded now. The flash. They pulled the final lever. The dish tilted. Sunlight struck the curved metal dot, and a beam of light exploded into the sky. Not fire, not sound, but light brighter than a star, sharper than a blade. A single, perfect flash. We are here. The ship changed course. It was coming. Dax fell to his knees. They saw it. They saw us. Mira helped Kale stand. He leaned on her, his face, weak but smiling. They watched as the ship descended, its engines glowing blue, cutting through the dust like a sword. After days of fire, silence, and death, rescue was real, and it was silver, long, and smooth, nothing like the broken wrecks of Xerax 9. Its engines glowed blue, cutting through the red dust with a soft hum. It moved with grace, like it didn't belong in this dead world. As it landed, the sand swirled, in wide circles, pushed back by the force of its descent. Then silence. The hatch opened, not with a blast, not with drama, but slowly, gently. From inside stepped 3 figures. They were not Terrans, tall, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. They wore sleek suits marked with the Concord symbol. Their movements were calm, precise, almost silent. They carried medical scanners, power packs, and rescue gear. Behind them, a drone rolled out, scanning the area. One of them taller than the rest, with a silver stripe on her shoulder. Step forward. Her voice was soft, translated through a small device on her chest. Are you alive? Mira took a shaky step forward. Her legs trembled. Her voice cracked. Yes, we're alive. The alien woman commander Lysa looked at them, at their torn suits, their bleeding hands, their cracked helmets. At Kale, leaning on Dax, his face pale with fever. At the rusted outpost, at the giant dish still pointing at the sky. Then she looked at the sand and saw the footprints, hundreds of them, leading from the wreck, across the salt flats, around the scavenger zones, up the ridge, into the outpost, out again, back and forth. A map of survival, written in dust. She turned to her team. Check them, now. The medics moved fast. They scanned Kale first. His fever was high. The burn was infected. One medic shook his head. He should be dead. But he's not, Mira said fiercely. He's here. They placed Kale on a floating stretcher, gave him cool fluid, clean bandages, a pain blocker. His eyes closed, but he smiled. Dax watched, arms crossed. You took your time. Commander Lysa looked at him. Your signal was weak. We thought it was a glitch, a ghost signal from a dead outpost. Mira pointed to the hand-crank radio, lying in the sand. That sent it. Lysa picked it up, old, dented, wires hanging out. This thing called for help. Yes, Mira said. And the storm gave it power, and we gave it hope. Lysa stared at the device, then at the three Terrans, thin, scarred, standing tall. You survived Xerax 9, she said, for 6 days, with no support, no power, no weapons. Dax shrugged. We had each other. Lysa fell silent. Behind her, the drone beeped. It had scanned the outpost, found the logs, the rover, the buried machine, the alien artifact that had risen from the sand. She turned back, her voice lower. You didn't just survive. You learned. You remembered. You honored the ones who came before. Mira nodded. We're not just survivors. We're humans. For the first time, Lysa bowed a small, slow dip of her head, a gesture of deep respect. Then she said, in all the Concord's history, no species has ever survived Xerax 9 for more than 2 days. Your kind was called weak, emotional, unfit. She looked at them, one by one. You just proved the galaxy wrong. The stretcher lifted Kale into the ship. Myra and Dax followed, slow, unsteady, but standing on their own feet. Inside, the air was cool, clean. The lights were soft. There was food, water, medicine, real chairs, real beds. Dax sat down and didn't move. Mira touched the wall. It was warm, alive. Lysa stood at the door. We'll reach orbit in 2 hours. Medical ship is waiting. You'll be home soon. Mira looked out the window. The outpost, the dish, the footprints in the sand, all fading, but not forgotten. Then a sound, faint, from outside. She turned. The dish still aimed at the sky was moving. Just a little, then flash. A beam of sunlight struck it again. One last signal. Mira smiled. She opened the comms panel on the wall, found the emergency channel, spoke into it clear, strong. This is Myra of Earth. We are leaving Xerax 9, but we were here. Kale was here. Dax was here. Humanity was here, and we survived. She paused. Let the galaxy know Terrans don't need perfect suits, perfect ships, perfect logic. We have something better. What? Lysa asked. Myra looked at Dax, at Kale, sleeping on the stretcher, at the fading footprints in the sand. We have heart. The ship rose. The desert shrank. The suns burned, and, high above the dead world, a single message pulsed through the star scent, not from a powerful warship, but from a rescue craft carrying 3 broken, bleeding, unbroken humans. Terrans survived Xerax 9, and for the first time in history, The intergalactic Concord fell silent, not in disbelief, but in respect, because they had just learned a truth older than stars, deeper than space. The strongest force in the universe isn't power. It's the will of those who refuse to die, and that will has a name: humanity. The stars outside the ship's window were no longer distant. They were close, bright, real. The rescue craft climbed through the thin air of Xerax-9, breaking free of the planet's pull, rising into the quiet dark of space. Below, the desert shrank first to a red dot, then to nothing. The twin suns faded behind the curve of the world. Inside, silence, not the silence of fear, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of survival. Kale lay on the medical cot, his breathing slow and steady. The fever had broken. The medicine worked fast. His eyes were closed, but his face was calm like a man who had fought a war and finally found peace. A soft light glowed above him. A machine hummed, checking his heart, his blood, his life. Mira sat beside him, one hand resting on his arm. She didn't speak. She just watched him breathe, watched the rise and fall of his chest. For 6 days, she had feared this moment would never come, that he would die in the sand, whispering about rain and trees, and a girl named Lyra. But he was here, alive, healing. Dax stood at the observation window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. He didn't move, didn't blink. He just stared at the stars, so many, so vast, so free. He had spent most of his life in the slums of New Jakarta, looking up at smog-covered skies, wondering if the stars were real. Now, he saw them, clear, cold, beautiful, and he didn't feel small. He felt alive. Commander Lysa entered quietly. She held a data pad, her dark eyes unreadable. "Your signal spread," she said, "across the Concord network. Every ship, every station, every world." Mira looked up. "What did it say?" Lysa read. "Terran survivors rescued from Xerax-9, all 3 alive. Cause, human resilience, ingenuity, and unity." She paused. "No species has ever survived that planet. Not the Vrax, not the Sirathi, not even the ancient Zen. But you did." Dax turned. "We didn't do it for fame. We did it to live." "I know," Lysa said. "That's what makes it powerful." She walked to the window. "In the Concord, strength is measured by weapons, speed, logic. We thought emotion was weakness, that fear made you fail, that pain broke you." She looked at the Mira, holding Kale's hand. Dax, standing tall, despite his shaking legs. Kale, still fighting, even in sleep. But you used your fear to stay alert, your pain to push harder, your love for each other to keep going. Mira whispered, "That's what humans do." Lysa nodded. "And now, the galaxy knows." A chime sounded. A message arrived. Lysa opened it. Her eyes widened. Then she smiled, a rare, soft thing. She turned the pad toward them. It was a live feed from Earth. A crowd stood in a city square, millions strong. Flags waved. Lights shone. A giant screen showed 3 faces. Kale, Mira, Dax. People were cheering, crying, singing. A child held a sign that read, "You did it. We're proud." Mira covered her mouth. Tears fell slow, quiet, deep. Dax leaned on the wall, his voice rough. They remember us. They never forgot," Lysa said. "When your signal came through, Earth went silent. Then, they rose." Footage played a teacher in Nairobi, telling students, "That could be you." An old man in Siberia, lighting a candle. "We are all Terrans." A space station in orbit, where human workers stood together, hands on hearts, watching the stars. Dax laughed, but it broke into a sob. "We were prisoners. Nobody. Trash. And now," Mira said, "we're proof." "Proof of what?" Lysa asked. That no matter how dark it gets, Mira said, humans don't stop. We don't hide. We don't break. We rise. Kale opened his eyes, weak, slow, but awake. He looked at the screen, at the faces, at the stars. He smiled. What? What happened? He whispered. Dax knelt beside him. We made it, brother. We're going home. Kale looked at Mira. And you stayed. I never left, she said. He closed his eyes again, not in pain, in peace. Lysa stepped back. When we reach the medical station, you'll be met by Concord leaders, doctors, reporters. They'll want answers. They'll want to study you. Myra looked at her. We're not lab rats. No, Lysa said. You're heroes. She paused, and something more. What? Hope. Outside, a fleet appeared. Not warships, not fighters, civilian vessels, human ships, old freighters, tiny scouts, a school transport, a farming station from Mars, all flying toward them, lights flashing in a paterna greeting, a welcome, a song, written in light. Dax pointed. They came, for us. They came, Lysa said, for what you mean. Myra stood, still weak, but strong in spirit. She looked at her people, the scattered, broken, unbroken humans of the galaxy, and she knew they had not just survived a desert, they had changed the galaxy, not with weapons, not with power, but with truth, that even in the darkest place, with nothing but dust and pain and fear, 3 humans had walked, had bled, had fought, had loved, and in doing so, they had shown the universe what it truly meant to be alive. The medical station hung in space like a silver leaf caught in starlight. It orbited a quiet moon, far from war, far from storms, far from the burning sands of Xerax 9. Lights glowed soft and blue. Ships floated nearby, watching, waiting, not in fear, in respect. Inside, Kale sat by the window. His leg was healing. The burn had been treated. The fever was gone. He wore clean clothes, simple, soft, earth-made. His face was still thin, his eyes still deep with pain, but he sat tall. He looked out at the stars, not as a prisoner, not as a survivor, but as a man who had walked through fire and come out changed. Mira entered quietly. She carried 2 cups of real tea steeped from earth leaves, sent by someone who cared. She handed one to Kale. He took it. Smells like home. She smiled. Tastes like it too. They didn't speak at first. They didn't need to. The silence between them was full of memories, of fear, of the things they had seen and done, of the friends they had lost, of the ones they had saved. Dax burst in, grinning, wearing a jacket covered in patches Earth flags, Mars symbols, even a drawing of the hand-crank radio. You should see the news, he said. They're calling us legends. Mira raised an eyebrow. Legends, yeah. Dax dropped onto a chair. There's a song about us, a hologram show. Kids are building models of the outpost in school. Kale chuckled. We didn't do it for songs. I know, Dax said, softer, now, but the galaxy needed to know that humans aren't weak, that we don't break, that we matter. A chime sounded. Commander Lysa appeared on the screen. Behind her stood a council of alien leaders, Volturians, with golden eyes, Zil with whispering voices, Sirathi with calm faces, all silent, all watching. Kale, Mira, Dax, Lysa said, the intergalactic Concord has made a decision. They waited. The planet Xerax 9 will no longer be marked dead zone. No. Rescue. Mira's breath caught. It will be renamed, Lysa continued. Not after a hero, not after a war, but after what happened there. The screen changed. Text appeared. Z.E. Ashes Navi. Renamed Terra Nova, the New Earth, where humanity proved it could rise from dust. Dax stood up. They named a planet after us. Lysa nodded. Not just you. All of you. the human spirit. What you did surviving, remembering, helping each other, that changed how the galaxy sees life. Not as power, not as logic, but as will. Kale looked at his hands scarred, rough, but strong. We didn't do anything special. You did, Lysa said. You lived when no one thought you could, and in doing so, you reminded us all what it means to be alive. The screen faded. Silence returned, but it was different now. Not empty. Full. Myra stood and walked to the window. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue and white jewel spinning in the dark. So small, so fragile, so beautiful. Dax joined her. We were just 3 people. And look what we did, she whispered. Kale came beside them. We didn't win because we were the strongest, or the smartest. We won because we refused to let go of each other. Dax smiled. Next time, let's pick a beach. They laughed, soft, real, human. Later that night, a signal was sent, not from a warship, not from a council, but from the medical station. It carried a message, simple and clear, sent to every world in the Concord, to all who feel lost, who feel broken, who feel too small to matter. Look to Terra Nova. 3 humans walked through fire. They had no power, no army, no perfect plan. They had only courage, love, and the will to take one more step. And because of that, they changed the galaxy. You can too. The Terran signal years later, on 100 worlds, children would point to the stars and say, that's where they walked. Museums would display a dented hand-crank radio like a sacred relic. Schools would teach, survival is not just strength, it is heart. And on the red dunes of Terra Nova, where the wind still howled and the sun still burned, 3 footprints remained half buried, but never gone. A reminder, a promise, a truth written in sand and blood and hope and high above. In the endless dark, a single line echoed across the stars, spoken by humans, whispered by aliens, remembered by all.